welcome to our second highlights reel, but this time we're focusing on our artists. But first, Josh, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you, Eamon?
Sure, look, we're all doing great. Everything is happening, everything's above board. We are just getting excited
12
to share with you.
episodes. We made
We've done
12
12 episodes.
episodes.
We have. That
Like,
is crazy. And we
I did
said,
it wrong.
You want to do that again?
There we go.
Okay.
12
12
episodes.
episodes. Cool. Excellent. That's really good. Amazing. We've got 12 episodes, which means we've had 12 artists on this
Yes.
show. And how exciting is it that we've had this diversity and we've seen lots of different types of art. We've seen lots of different types of artworks and artists. And I'm talking through my arse. But anyway, it's been great.
And
And
not
so,
just artists, people in the art world, gallerists, folks that are go
yes.
beyond just being a visual artist. And I think that's what makes this highlight reel a little special because you're getting a bunch of different people's perspectives on a bunch of common kinds of issues.
Absolutely. And you know what that means too, Josh? It means that if you are a gallerist or if you are a curator, an art historian, a lecturer, a person who's just interested in art and would like to come on as a guest on Spill the RT, hit us up. Just send us an email at hello@newcollective.com and
We see
you can
you.
be
We
on
see you.
spilling some tea. So, yeah, that's all from us right now. So let's bring you back in time. Maria, we're coming to you. Maria, you are doing some great work at the moment. You're doing your master's. Tell us a little bit about what's happening in your studio right now.
Well, I'm in the process of building some rather large boats, 7 foot long. I've built five. They're all made from different materials, and they are not to float. Well, they are going to float, except they're going to float in the sky because I'm making an installation with these five boats floating above a garden of the future. So the idea is that they are vessels for us to imagine our future, given the shambles and state of much of what's around us right now. I know in the US it's very hard times and certainly in other
Mm,
countries. So just creating a work for people to sort of join me in imagining differently.
great. And
And and I,
we have a really cool sneak peek that we want to show everybody. So if I could just transition into that, that'd be cool. And then we'll. So here we go. This is your Haunting the Future installation piece.
yeah, so this is the wooden boat. It's about 7 feet long, and you can see it's hanging from the ceiling. And so it'll be in good company with boats made from bioplastic and vellum and woven aluminum. So I'm playing with ideas of repair, stitching together, gluing, sewing, with as activities that we have to engage in currently, presently. I'm trying to stay very real. I'm like not choosing like dystopia or utopia. I'm trying to like put people in a garden with their boots on the ground and sort of the ideas of modern cosmologies and my own history. I'm Irish also, so our own myths are very powerful. So I'm drawing on past, present, future, and the sort of the ideas of circularity of time and other speculative futures. It's been very fun,
Yeah.
super interesting.
Yeah.
And how long does a build like that take you for each of the boats, Maria?
It depends. I mean, it probably takes 2 or 3 weeks, depending on the material. I mean, it's the first time round, so like it's exploration. It's gotten some of it's quicker, but like I'm making bioplastic right now and stitching it together. It's like a skin. It's very cool, but I had to remake one of the bioplastics, so you kind of go back to the drawing board and you're tinkering. So it could take this. It's 3 or 4 weeks maybe. Not to mention all the thinking and conceptualization before that. So,
Mm.
so
No, it
work in
looks
progress.
incredible, and it's so refined
Thank
even
you.
in its current state. And I think what it looks like to me, it has that vesicule feeling about it when you look at it, when you observe it, and the fact that it's elevated, I think, is quite interesting because typically your vessel is or a boat is in water or it's submerged in something. So the fact that it's elevated is maybe giving it another level of something. Is there a particular reason for that?
Yeah, I'm trying to sort of do play with uncanniness and sort of boats are very metaphorical and there is lots of boats sailing off and so I'm playing with cosmological things like boats in the air. I've got the garden, I've got the cosmos on the ground. So I've got things a little upside down. I'm just trying to shake people out of what might be ordinary. Like it's not really an ordinary garden. It's kind of tinkering with people, and then you have the boats in the air to sort of help them sail on to a different future, perhaps. I don't know.
And then
That
with the
sounds
time-
really corny.
With the time we have left, can you tell us a little bit about that garden?
Well, you and I talked yesterday at length about it, Josh. Thank you so much. But the garden it's based on a Persian garden with 4 quadrants, and each quadrant has like a different feel. So one of them is a pond, which is based on narcissus, but it has fragments of glass on it. So to deal with the fragmentation of mud in life. And then there's a wilded garden, which suggests like, after we're gone, if we don't get it right, things will still survive us. Like this wilded garden will still survive us. And then I also have a sort of semi-suggestion of a boat wreckage. I've got this copper that I'm working with and old beams that's in another part of the quadrant. And as I said, there's a cosmological video that will reflect up at the boats, cosmos on the ground, boats in the air. So there's footpaths. The idea is people should be able to be in it and be fully embodied and, hopefully affected by the work. I don't know. We'll see.
Oh, that sounds really cool. We're really looking forward to sharing all of that work with our collective, and then as well with our audiences across our social streams on Instagram, on Twitter, on wherever you check out Nua Collective, and of course on our website at www.nuacollective.com, where you can see all of Maria's work and Josh's work and everybody else's work in the collective too. So do check that out. Cool, right, let's move swiftly on. So we're going to go into talk a little bit about Lucy. Lucy,
that's me.
In your prime at your Green Sheep studio, and there is lots of activity that's been going on in the Green Sheep studio. Lucy, would you like to tell us a little bit about what's happening there?
Yeah, I've been running projects in the studio. It's right next door to my cafe, so I'm kind of running both at the same time. And I was doing an artist in the shop window project for 3.5 months, where I had a different artist in the window working away, and it was an open house type of thing, so passers-by could either look through the window or come in and chat with the artist. So every week we had a new one, and it really went well. People loved it. And I was in the window a lot as well, because you sort of pop in when people can't make it and stuff. And it was a really interesting thing, because as the weeks went on, more people were coming in to watch the process. And it wasn't about the end result like a gallery. It was watching artists work and talking to them through their practice and process. And we had schools and, groups come in. And it was a really... It was a really interesting thing to do and to observe as well, and we had exhibitions and all sorts going on. It was great. So that's why I'm sat in the window for the promo, because it was called Artist in the Shop Window. So I thought I'd slap myself into the window for a photo.
Very cool. And what I thought was really interesting about it is I know the area because it's my hometown, but having a open studio like you did through a big massive window, just like you would see in any shop window, to a very rural environment, a very regional town with people who wouldn't necessarily appreciate art, or at least at the very most conceptual art, or art that would be a little bit out there. And we all know that you like to kind of push some of those boundaries, and I think that's really exciting, because it exposes people to show the possibilities of what art is and what it can be. I think that was really exciting. So let's move swiftly to one of your pieces, and I think this work was actually exhibited in this space only a few weeks ago.
Yeah. This is a series of drawings that I've done of St. Bridget, but she's reimagined. So Ireland is really into St. Bridget, and it's the 1500th anniversary of her death, apparently, this year. So I decided to reimagine her doing stuff that she's never been seen doing before. So she's pole dancing there with her nipple tassels and her spurs on. There's pictures of her having a mammogram. There's drawings of her. She's auditioning for Cirque du Soleil in one of them, and she's being dangled upside down. That's the mammogram one. That's actually been taken by an anthology called the Red Cow Anthology. It's a book full of artwork and poems about St. Bridget that's being published in October. And she was Ireland's first abortionist as well. So there's 2 drawings of her. First of all, she was holding like a bottle of gin and some some coat hangers and some herbs and things, and somebody objected, and I had to take it. It was taken off Instagram, so I gave her 2 bottles with the Plan B drugs in instead, and nobody really copped those. So yeah, she's a bit of a heroine to me because she was the first abortionist. She was actually cogitosis wrote about her about 100 years after she died, and there was a nun that kind of fell off the wagon of not having sex and got pregnant, and she arrived with her little bag of herbs, and she wasn't pregnant anymore afterwards. So she was a good one.
So you've thoroughly modernized her.
I have thoroughly modernised her. She's covered in HRT patches in a menopause clinic. She's having a mammogram. She's at one point she's having a smear test. She's having her legs waxed. She's squeezing spots. She's doing all the things. Yeah, plucking whiskers out of her menopausal chin. All of those things.
Very good.
There's 45 drawings of her doing some weird stuff.
And you can check all of those pieces on, well, at least some of them on the New Eclectic website, and we'll share lots more over the coming weeks as well. But there is another piece, and I'd like you to describe what this is.
Well, this is called Grind, and it's a durational performance piece, and it consists of a faceless body, just your normal kind of barista person who you don't really notice, grinding coffee, only he ground it for 5 hours with a few breaks because my coffee grinder overheated a few times. But 12 kilos of coffee beans were ground, and as they were ground, they were just put out into the cup you can see there, and it all overflowed onto the floor. And it's about waste. It's about the waste of consumerism and capitalism and all of those things. Now, it wasn't me in the morph suit because I've had 4 children and I'm 55, and me in a morph suit wouldn't look great. So I put one of my friends into the morph suit when he volunteered to just stand there for hours grinding coffee. It actually worked really well because I had it mic'd up to speakers. So as he ground the coffee in an exhibition full of all other pieces of work, it just filled the whole space and drowned everybody out, which I thought was really cool.
And the smell, I would imagine.
And the smell was amazing. And I got all the coffee was donated to me from the guy that I buy my coffee for the shop. So that was cool. So we got through about 12 kilos of coffee during the performance, and it was all spilt on the floor. And it was lovely the way you see it's kind of come up to a point in the cup. So it just, that point stays the same and it just falls each time. And as I say, the action that he did was the same every time. He leant down, he got the coffee, he put it in the grinder, ground it the same amount of time each time. So it was a kind of a meditative performance as well. So
Great.
yeah,
It's really cool, and it's great to see the multiple different ways that you work and how you use so many different media, so many different techniques, introducing the performance, introducing the drawing. There's and I know that you do lots of photography and film work as well. So I mean, it's great to see that you are using that interdisciplinary approach to your practice.
I love performance. Performance, I really, really enjoy performance because I'm a bit of a show-off anyway. I think last year I did a performance where I did a Catholic mass in a nightclub dressed as a priest. That was good fun. And I dressed up as a granny at it was an outside gallery. And everybody I was a 1970s granny, and everybody that came in was treated like my grandchild, whether they were older than me or younger. So they were told to sit down, and they had a glass of Ribena, and they had to play Operation or Connect 4 while they were given, a fairy cake or a scone. It was really good. It was really good fun.
Nostalgic, I'm sure, for most people involved.
It was, and I looked exactly like my granny, which was really weird.
That's
Yeah.
thank you.
As I sat topping and tailing gooseberries. Yeah.
Well, Lucy, it has been absolutely fantastic to have you on the show with us today and to talk about your practice and to hear your views on all of the art class that we have had. I'm going to try my little sound effect now, see if that works.
Wow.
Oh, no, it's wow. We got wow.
Yay!
So, Janine, the other pop star in the room, we will now go and introduce you to the world that is our millions of subscribers here on YouTube. So, Janine, tell us a little bit about you. What sort of work do you make?
So I was in a similar program to what Josh is doing for my master's and ended up embracing home economics and cooking my own material, which includes bioplastics. So lately I have been using kitchen chemistry to make starch-based bioplastics embedded with things like shredded US currency, rose petals, my own financial statements. And so I'm in 2 shows right now.
Cool.
And one is at the Mattatuck Museum in Waterbury, Connecticut. And I have a piece, it's a quilt show. So it's called Stitching the Revolution, Quilts as Agents of Change. And I have a piece called For Love or Money that is in that show.
Let's have a look at that.
And
there you go.
Yeah, I think we have a
Give us that title
that.
again.
So,
I think you broke
For
up a little
Love
bit there.
or
Give
Money.
us the title.
Oh, sure. For Love or Money. So all the green that you see is shredded US currency, and the red is rose petals.
Wow.
So, and it's all biodegradable. So at some point it questions, is the construct of marriage, or is marriage a construct, or, should you marry for love or money?
But the threading is not biodegradable, is it?
No. So once it does biodegrade, the only thing remaining will be the threads.
Which is an interesting concept, right? That the ties that bind us are what remain after everything else goes away.
Yeah, that is true.
Josh, you romantic, you.
For love or money. Come on. I'm just... I didn't say I was gonna. I'm not tying anything up, right?
That is really incredible. I absolutely
well,
love
speaking
that
of
concept.
Yeah, but speaking of tying things up, in the next image, I did some work for a solo show, and thinking along the same ideas of wedding. I have a couple of pieces. One is called Wedded Bliss on the left hand of the screen, which again plays with the double wedding ring quilt pattern and the money and love. And then on the right is marital constraints. So that idea of tying someone up or constricting is a corset made out of my bank statements around my wedding dress. So that is in a solo show right now at Silvermine Galleries in New Canaan, Connecticut.
Very cool. That work is very cool. I love your kind of nod to history there as well, though, with historical fashions and how, the corset with the traditional idea that women had to have a certain way of dressing and how they present themselves to the man, etc. But it's I think that's incredible, beautiful work.
What I always find interesting about what you do, Janine, is that you pare it down, right? Because you actually have to produce it. So like as it gets bigger, that's more work that you have to do. And so each piece I've seen you do, and I've seen you do other pieces that are even more political and sort of more pointed in making certain kinds of statements, is like you kind of find this way of like, I'm going to find the statement and the work and the two together. Like it locks in a way that is not overcomplicated, but it says exactly like I think the message comes across very clearly.
Oh, well, thanks, Josh. That's very nice of you to say. But, we hope when we put our stuff out that people get it or bring their own kind of ideas to it. So hopefully that happens in these 2 shows.
And do you think at the end you'll have a show with some of these degraded pieces all together, so that what you put out there is like the remains?
Oh, that is a good idea. At some point, I would like to take one or two of the pieces, put it outside, and actually do a slow-mo or a time-lapse video of it as it biodegrades. But we'll see. I haven't quite gotten there yet.
That would be interesting for a 1-channel or 3-channel, split it up. That would be, very interesting.
Really cool, really cool. I love it. I think what's really great is that on the face of it, it represents one thing, and then the fact that you have it escalated to 700 million levels above that is just incredible. It's just wonderful work and really, really thought-provoking. Now, Frank, I think we're going to have a little chat with you and just get to know a little bit about you. So, Frank, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you come from? What's your practice about? Tell us, who is Frank?
Hey, cool. Thanks for asking. So I am, I guess I say now, a mostly photographer from upstate New York in the Albany area. And the last couple of years I've been working in a way of combining words and images in the style of other, photographers and artists before me. And what I'm trying to do in this series that we're going to look at a little bit anyway is I'm making a fairy tale, and at the end there is sort of a moral, like in a fable, but you can make of it what you will. In other works that I'm doing now, I'm trying to tell lies in a way that they seem to be true, and tell the truth in a way that seems to be lie, in order to blur those boundaries and make people sort of examine, their other truths that they think are true that may be lies. It's happened to me recently with something that I learned as a child, and a certain thing that I held as a truth turned out to be not true. And then I got to decide, what do I do with it? Do I keep it? Do I discard it? I ended up discarding it. But I think it's an important question about discerning, especially discerning media, when we're lied to by our news sources so often. So what we just saw there was 4 parts of a series of 6 about a person who stumbles into a swamp and discovers a magical moose, and the moose demands a kiss and grants a wish. And there's a bit of poetry and a bit of prose and a 6-page narrative, 6-page, as it is. But all these images are digital photography printed on the page, and then the handwriting is done in pigment liner directly on the surface of the print. So that's my handwriting in my own, or my writing in my own handwriting.
And you were saying to us before you came on about the process of just even the building of the image itself. How you?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. That image is particularly interesting to me, as when I was flipping through the shoot afterwards. I stopped in my tracks and said, that's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Just about. It's not a digitally imposed image. That's a straight photograph, but it looks like really bad Photoshop. So I think a lot of times the goal here is to make a photograph that's so weird that people can't figure out how you made it. And in this case, it's just I hung the elk head on the tree and took the picture. But I don't know what it is. Something in the depth of field makes it feel like it's just floating there.
It seems to me that much of what you deal with is a question of like the uncanny valley of how does it get weird, but weird enough that it reads as real or true, right? Rather than something that's like put together to seem that it's real.
Right. It could be true. And that image sort of speaks for the whole thing, I think.
And how do you conceptualize that authenticity when you're trying to think about it?
I've moved on from this. This piece is 6 images. I've since animated them, and just simple animations in Procreate. It's fun. It's kind of snappy, and I then read the story as the text appears on the screen. So taking this idea of these images and pushing it, further in another direction as well.
They become kind of like fables, right? Like sort of like dreamscapes. They seem to me almost like dreamy, floaty, not quite certain. Is this really what's happening or not?
Yeah, some are fairy tales, and some are, like you said, toe that line between reality and non-reality.
I think they're really beautiful images, and I'm looking forward to just reading through some of the text as well in the future. And the animation sounds amazing. And did you use those images that we've seen just now? Are they part of that animation?
That's right, exactly what you're saying. It's just simple. simple voice, spoken word. And as I finish reading the page, I move to the next image and start animating on the drawing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So like in this image, I couldn't, I'm also working around the idea that I couldn't get a hold of a real moose to work with. Their agents are tough. So I ended up wanting to draw in the moose. And so I did. I drew in the moose in the background, and then ended up, by the time I'm done reading that piece, the entire page is covered in pink marks.
That's kind of great,
using pink as a symbol of the love of the moose, or the magic of the moose.
And is there a significance to the pink?
No, I just thought it was an interesting idea just to sometimes in a couple of these other ones, I'll use one color to represent each character. And as each character in the narration is doing its thing, like the red hearts will appear, black hearts will appear, or something like that. So in this case, the pink just represents the moose and the moose's actions. How
do we get to see your work, or is there anything coming up, or how do we find out more about Frank?
We do have the SVA MFA art practice second year exhibit coming up here in Midtown at the address 133 West 21st Street. Woo. That's in Manhattan. That's going to open July 10th. We're going to have a reception July 11th, 6 to 8. And that video that we're just discussing will be on display there.
So that'll be up for several weeks.
Right. That'll be up through, I believe, the end of July.
Amazing. That's great. Well, look, once that...
Thank you for coming on today, Frank.
We'll share information about that across our own social channels as well. And
brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Cara, can you tell us a little bit what you're working on at the moment?
At the moment, I'm working on paper using really simple methods, coloring pencils, some watercolor pencils, and watercolor. This series has just, not a series, but like this group of drawings that you're looking at. I suppose I had time to pause and reflect on my work for a while. I'm a mark maker, and I use repetition a lot. I was just at that point, and I just wanted to know, I was like, what's my style? What's my signature look in my artwork? And I wanted to make a new body of work. And funny enough, I was watching a film on Diane Nyad. She's an Olympic swimmer, and she was swimming from Florida to Cuba. And I watched that film, and it was just like her pure grit and her, that human spirit to never give up and just to go for it and keep going. And I just was like, yeah, that's what my work is about. I'm just going to take that one simple mark, and I'm going to repeat it over and over and over again. And that one mark stands for human spirit, the resilience, not giving up, keep going, don't go back, keep moving forward, move through the pain. And and starting on a blank sheet of paper where you've got, it's like writing. I work in these works anyway, I work from the left over to the right. So it's like writing, and they kind of make themselves. I can't control what the overall look is going to be like. And the ones that you're looking at right now, green and yellow, they're made with coloring pencils. So every time I make that single mark, it is just to the point. The paper as well is matched to the pencil. It's gorgeous Fabriano etching paper, and each mark is made with pressure that's just bringing it to almost the breaking point. So, and it takes quite a long time to get through one sheet of paper.
Do you find that the mark making is also meditative for you?
It is, Josh. It's meditative in the way that it slows me down, and I have to sit still, and I've got it. And it's like looking at a blank sheet of paper and knowing that the way I'm working through is so slow, and I have so many thoughts in my head saying, this is crap, stop. I get all that, but I've just got to focus on what I'm doing and just be like, keep going, and move through it. Sit there, but keep going and move through it. And there's a lovely thing of different thoughts that you have in your processing. So there's loads of different emotions and thoughts that I have as I'm going through it, and laughs as well. Sometimes I listen to a podcast and I just work my way through it. So it's encompassed. To me, that one mark is everything it means to be a human being, And the one that we can see now, can you see that one it's very hard to see on a screen, but it's the with the watercolors. So when I work in the pencils, to me that's a physical. I call that graft. As in like it's really physical for me to do it. And then one day when it was finished, I put it outside when we had actually sun here in Ireland. Put it out onto the wall, looked at it, and I said, "Oh, I saw it. I was able to see it," and I just thought, "Yeah, I like it." It's a very, very mundane. It's just taking the mundane, beauty in the mundane. There's a lot I could say about these works. Yeah,
that's really cool. That's great, and great to get that little insight into your work too, Earl, and to hear you speak about it so passionately. It's great, and looking forward to sharing more of those works with our Nua Collective members, and then further with you, our audience at home, who follow us across all of our multiple different platforms here at Nua Collective. So that's fantastic, Carol, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. We really, really appreciate you bringing your work to us and sharing them with our audiences, and I hope that everybody gets to check them out on nuacollective.com. Katrīna, we are going to talk more about you now, because you're very interesting, and I think your work is very cool, and I think the world needs to know more about it, and we feel that it's time for you to share it. So there was this little performance piece that you were working on quite recently, and we have a little bit of a video material from it. But first, I'm going to just show everybody a still of that work first. You want to talk just a bit about this still first?
Sure. The image that you actually see is the very end of the performance piece. It's kind of my walk of shame back into the museum. It wasn't even kind of like part of the work, but it was just a beautiful shot as it was happening as the sun was setting. And the whole thing lasted, I think, a little over an hour, like an hour 15. It's always really hard to gauge with performance because I lose complete sense of time and space. The work that I make isn't very much rehearsed as a play, where I'm certain about how long a certain element will take. It is also very much based on audience interaction. So it was approximately like over an hour long. So by the time we got back, it was like an hour and a half. And yeah, this was my homage to kind of my persona as trash queen. I created this whole collection of plastic trash curated. So there's all these rules of what can be collected and why, based on my research into our plastic consumption and recycling and science behind how it impacts the environment. So some of it is a bit like tongue-in-cheek, like the dress, for example, that I wear at the very beginning, as you can see on the video while I'm walking in. There's like this text spray painted on that says no whites, no blacks, no grays, no browns, no, I think I might say something else, no neutrals. And at first, people might read that and be like, oh, what is this about? Is this like about humanity? And in a way it is. Like there's a lot of input into this piece. There's like the female and the male signs at the very front of the dress, which is also a commentary on just gender differences in our everyday reality. But it all melts in this huge conglomerate melting pot of absorption by plastic trash, which is like everywhere. So this like persona of this royal highness is very much made out of just our everyday discarded garbage that we produce so much.
It's incredibly stunning work, and it's very cool. And the fact that you're saying so much without saying anything is incredible. The work itself also, it was in this very cool fashion show like environment, and that whole high fashion element that kind of comes with the fact that it is you talking about trash and talking about like waste and obviously how that affects what we're doing on a day-to-day basis in our domesticality. It's just incredible. I think it's just really cool.
Thank you. That means so much. I'm really glad that like it happened at all as an event. Like it's a big moment for it to occur.
Can you say us a little bit more about the rules you use for selecting the plastic?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there's these color considerations because during my research about plastic and specifically about recycling, Because there's this myth about, like you should recycle, but really recycling, as we know, is the last step. Like before you even get to recycling, you should reduce your consumption, then you should reuse, then you should repurpose. And there's actually in like the environmental community, and once you go into some research about this, there's so many REs like before the recycling. And in terms of actually recycling, the worst kind of plastic, which is interesting because let's remember that Lush exists. And if we think about how their packaging looks like when it's in plastic, when it's not in paper, what color is it usually?
Black.
Yeah. And that's actually like the worst plastic to get recycled. Like it's almost impossible. Like all the technology that they have for like the scanners to separate and everything to do, that color is very problematic. The easiest ones are usually white and clear. So I pick everything that's really bright colored, which is kind of like in the middle. But that's also because of personal aesthetic considerations, because I love color and I read a lot about color and I try to research it as well. So to me, those rules are kind of, an amalgamation of all these personal and both universal things that are going on. So that's why there are, no whites, no blacks, no grays, no browns, no clear, just plain plastics in the work.
Amazing. Yeah, no, it's really cool work and like very impressive. Katrīna, that's been really super, and thank you so much for coming on today as well and spilling the tea with us. You have been fantastic and an amazing person to have on, and we will be sure to drag you on again to talk to us. But Josh, what do people need to do now?
Remember to like, share, follow, send to your friends, find people for the end of the day.
Do it.
Don't miss out. We got all kinds of crazy shit coming because the art world never stops giving what it gives. Nothing but weirdness.
John, you've been working in quite a few different things, and we've had you on the collective for quite a few years now, and there's a lot of cool works that have come through as a result. And what are you working on now? Where are you at?
Well, I'm sort of continuing a strand of painting that I've been working on for several years, but I keep coming back to, and I suppose it's sort of personal, relating to the fact that I lived for several years in the Soviet Union, worked over there when it was the Soviet Union, Russia after it, and it's just, I suppose it's my response to that whole experience, country, and even I thought when I was doing the paintings originally, the earlier ones, that it was reflective of the Soviet Union, but I see it now that it's still very much the aesthetics of life and what the feeling that you get living and working over there and watching what's happening in the war. Even it hasn't really changed. It wasn't just the communist system that made the place like it was. It's still the same. And so my works are partly representational, partly abstract, partly a comment on what I felt, but partly, I suppose all work is personal in a sense, ultimately. So I suppose it's my sort of represents what I feel, what I see. I'd characterize it, I suppose, as more formalist than representational. So even though they look quite as if they're narrative paintings like the one you're looking at there, that's sort of an interesting image of factory workers in the biggest chocolate factory, one of the biggest chocolate factories in the Soviet Union. And most of the workers was run by a woman. Pretty much all of the workers were women. The director of the factory said was a woman. She set up an institute to train people to work in the factory. So in some senses, the Soviet Union was, strange as it might seem, pretty progressive place for women. They would occupy positions that in Ireland, for example, would have been unthinkable. The other hand, it wasn't, as you know, all roses in the Soviet Union. So the smiling workers, to a degree that was true, but in another sense, there was a lot of things that were wrong with the Soviet Union. This is another example of a gymnast. Gymnastics, as you know, was big in the Soviet Union and in all of the Eastern Bloc. I suppose it could have been a way of an escape from a reality which wasn't so beautiful. and dynamic, but good sides and bad sides. I find it's sort of hard to speak about these in a literal sense, because the first layer is sort of literal, and the second layer is more impressionistic. And what they're trying to do is use the tools of visual art to get across a feeling, a sense that I had that can only be expressed visually. Because I've tried to express it in other forms in writing, but I think just as music expressions is a unique language, I also think that art, painting is a unique language, which is why I'm sounding so incoherent, because these things are hard to talk about. But, it's what I feel, I suppose. Yeah.
I guess I get a definite sense of kind of Russian formalism in different ways, and I'm wondering how much of that is because you're trying to reflect, right, the context environment that you were seeing versus sort of that kind of formalism is what you're actually interested in as a painter, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I would categorize myself as a formalist in terms of painting. So that for me, the form of the painting is the content, strange as that may seem. And that form, it could be representational, it could be abstract, but the content is the impact it makes on the viewer, which is, doesn't depend on me, obviously. What I try to strive for is, I'm not comparing myself to it, but I remember reading an interview with Francis Bacon, and he said he wanted to sort of get to the viewer at a visceral level. And whatever that takes, if it's representational, if it's, photographic, like photographic, if it's completely abstract, if it's dots, like, Damien Hirst, whatever it takes, using the armory of the visual artist, that's my philosophy of art. And so it's what I'm trying to do here is to express something that's only expressible through visual art, using whatever media I have at my disposal and that I figure will help me to express what I'm trying to express. If that makes any sense at all.
Absolutely, 100%. No, it does. It does. And that's all any of us can do and hope for it. I think it's a really it's a really wise way of looking at art, and I think it's something that a lot of people need to kind of come back into thinking, like when they're making visual work, because sometimes it can become so self-indulgent that it's not reflective of what it is they're trying to say. And I think what you're doing here is, there's a bit of you in it, obviously, but you're through the expressionism of the painterly elements of it. It's quite cool and quite interesting, but you're still trying to say something at the same time through your response to some of your life in the Soviet Union, which is quite cool.
I think in most artists, we have to choose a genre in which to express what we're trying to express in our work, whether it's painting or photography. But, somebody said to me, compare Goya's painting of the execution on the 4th of May, if you know that painting.
Yeah.
And which is, just gets you right there. Compare that to Manet's execution of the Emperor of Mexico. Emperor Maximilian of Mexico, it's soldiers shooting this Emperor of Mexico. And, it just doesn't get you. It's just sort of a representational image of soldiers shooting at so they're both narrating the same event, but one is doing it, I would say, better than the other. One is reaching places that the other doesn't reach, both telling the same story, but, the artistic media that they're using or their ability to do that is the difference. So it's not so much, that's what I'm saying, the form is the content. That's what I mean. Yeah. Content
kind of like art. It's like archive over emotion. This is what I kind of feel about it. When you kind of look to get a response to some sort of topic or concept, and you're doing something that's a real literal representation of that, whether that's by photograph or by film or by documentary. It's like it's like the documentary rather than the film element of it, or the fine art element of it.
Yeah. Any of those things you mentioned, could work really well, if they're done by good artists, really, It doesn't really, really matter what the medium is. People choose their medium, what best express what they want to express, I suppose. So the form itself is not, it's how that form is realized on or in whatever medium you're working. That's what makes it work or not, and that's mean, it can work for me. It may not work for the viewer. That's just, you do it and then that's it. It's not up to you to tell people or to explain to people. It should sort of reach a part that almost is difficult to explain. If it's too easy to explain, maybe it's not art. I don't know. Maybe it's strong to say. I mean, I know, Josh, you seem to be interested in having art having a message.
Well, I think if you're doing political art that doesn't have a message, then it's not really political art, right? It's not that all art has to have a message, but if you're going to do political art and there's no punch, then it's not political. Thank you. Very interesting.
And from that point, John, it's great to see you and great to see your work. And I'm so delighted that you got a chance to share some of this with the...
Thank you for having me.
Build the RT, not kill the RT audience. And we'll definitely have you on again because you're very interesting to speak with. And has a really good reflection on different things. So thank you very much for coming on. And don't forget, everyone, you can see John Murray's work on newacollective.com.
Collectors are ready to buy whatever from old for big money. But listen, all the collectors who are watching now at me, look and listen, please buy art from the living artist. Your money and your support will be more valuable and appreciated by living people. Not in 1,000 years, but right now. Please spend your money on art. Today.
Everyone.
Yeah!
I'll take a service announcement from Ksenija. Thank you very much.
We love you, Ksenija. You are fantastic.
Thank you very much. You see, and this is where it's all at. Thank you, Ksenija.
So with that in mind, why don't you tell us about your practice and what you do in the gallery, Ksenija?
Why?
Because it's important.
I'm managing to gather people who wanted to give their art to people who wanted to see art, but I don't manage to bring people who want to buy art.
Yeah, I think we all struggle with that, Ksenija. I think in the 4 years, nearly 5 years that New Collective are in operation, it's always the same thing. We have a bounty of people who are supporting us, who are looking at us, who are engaging, and who are also like fellow artists. We need more collectors. So more collectors, come and buy art and support us so that I can keep going. But tell us about your gallery. What's happening in your gallery?
I'm making group exhibitions. Mostly it's art salons because it's inspired by 19th century Parisian art salons. A lot of people are bringing their artworks by one theme, and now it's Born Dreams, and it explores the multi-faced nature of human desires and dreams, capturing their evolution, transformation, and impact on individuals and society.
Cool. Oh, very cool. Interesting. Very good. So how long is that exhibition running for?
Till October 13.
How many artists are in the exhibition?
12.
And are they all from Latvia?
One of them is from Ukraine. He sent his works.
Oh, amazing. Great. Very cool. Excellent. And so when you do exhibitions, is there a protocol for you when you're bringing artists in, or what's the process that you undertake?
I make open call, and something with certain rules. I call the theme, and people are showing their artwork which they think will fit into this theme. So I am, and also I'm just writing to artists I like, and this is how I making mostly the exhibitions. Also, all of the artworks are selling. Sometimes I sell something, sometimes not. So mostly I'm making money on events and alcohol, because making money on art is not stable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you find yourself then as a gallerist having to kind of be like your artists, having to do multiple things in order to stay in business.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of galleries in Latvia have some side hustle, and art is like second thing they do.
Yeah. It is difficult, and trying to sustain that sort of business and trying to figure out what way that works is just entrepreneurial, and I think being an artistic entrepreneur, is a creative entrepreneur, is equally as valuable as just supporting the space for the artist to come and see. So I mean, look, fair dues to you, and like it's another way of looking at what we were talking about earlier, is using those transferable skills. So it's very cool. There's another question I have for you as well, is that is there a way that artists can connect with you in order to kind of potentially use your space?
So they can write wherever in internet Masa Studio, and they will find my homepage, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. There will be number and there will be email. So if there is no open call, you just send portfolio, and I usually answer very fastly. And if there is no open call, I just say that yes, I will remember you, and I will text you if when the next open call will be.
Great, that's fantastic. And look, we will send everybody a link to your website. And no?
I'm joking. Yes, please.
All right. Okay. Cool. Right. So I will put the link of the website right here, so you'll be able to see that. And so do click on that and check out and see more about Ksenia's gallery space, and you can find out more details there. And do follow her on Instagram and get to see all of the work that she is doing with the amazing artists. So, Ksenia, we've heard a lot about your gallery space and everything, but how about giving us a few details about what it is that you do?
I'm an art curator and gallery owner from Riga, but it's not just a gallery, it's more like a cultural center. First, you enter and you see the gallery room, and then you go deeper and you discover an event space and cocktail bar, where a lot of entertainment events takes place, such as live music every Friday, stand-ups comedy, lectures, poetry, and so on. And this place was founded in February last year with no money, but with a lot of friends who were ready to help. Before that, I was creating exhibitions for 4 years in different locations, but now I can say that this is truly a professional work.
Amazing.
Because I actually have no formal education. I'm not proud of it, but for me, it was easier to learn in the field.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really amazing. Thank you so much, Ksenia.
Thank you for being here.
Fantastic.
So yes, I was born in the U.S. And then I got admitted into the Art Academy of Latvia, and so I moved to Riga, Latvia. I'm also Latvian American, I should say. My mother's side of the family is Latvian. My grandparents were born in Latvia, and then they left and went to a variety of different countries, and during World War II, and then ended up in the U.S. So I have citizenship here. I was able to get admitted to the Art Academy, and I was there for drawing specialty. And I just finished my master's degree this year, actually. So,
congratulations.
Yes, that's my show.
A really good picture of your exhibition.
That's my room as a part of our graduate show, which was amazing. So they have 8 venues or something, maybe 6 venues across the city. There's 2 main buildings of the Art Academy, and not every room, but every floor has just decked out artists, students who are graduating both from the bachelor's and master's program. So unfortunately, if you're in Latvia, you can't see it anymore, but it was really cool. And so,
definitely.
Yeah.
And here's some of the stills of that work. You have this drawing piece. Do you want to talk about this character? This character seems to come up quite a bit or the subject matter.
Sure. Yeah. So this is a drawing on paper. I use charcoal powder mixed with water, and then I use a brush to sort of like watercolor, but with charcoal. And then I also use graphite pencil as well. And I think on this one, I also did use some pressed charcoal just to get some of the darker areas. It's a part of this, I mean, the whole series, my exhibition is, it's called Personal Connections Within the Apartment. And I was attempting to sort of reflect on the connections that, right, it's exactly the title, reflect on some of the interactions that are happening within an apartment and exchanges of affect. I was looking into affect theory after one professor sort of suggested it to me. And it's this really cool idea of, I mean, it's not necessarily visible to the eye, but there is this like exchange of energy between not just like humans, but like pretty much everything that's like in your environment. Whether that is feelings, or in my project, I was thinking that maybe it's also like experiences and sort of traces history of things that have happened. So, for example, this is my studio. I did 3 drawings of my apartment. And this is my living room with kitchen, obviously a little edited. It's not exactly it, but the idea was to introduce these fantastical sort of abstractions as a way to visualize these affective exchanges or these exchanges of interaction. So this chair, for example, I've sat there countless times. I've had many Zoom meetings during COVID there for school. I had a lot of meals. I've sat across from friends. Katrīna has sat there with me once. I think we were doing makeup before the carnival. That was really fun. So I have these like sort of feelings of like, okay, so much has happened at this one table, right? How could that look? Obviously, it's not going to be one emotion because so many different emotions. So it's this multifaceted sort of experience. And then you think about the people, it's an apartment. So the people who have lived there before me, right? So and people who will live there after me. So that is also a really vast like thing to try to capture visually. But at the same time, it was a little relieving and easy because I didn't feel obligated to scientifically, concretely say, this is what that looks like. This is me sort of exploring this really fun idea and this very vast sort of feeling about a space and sort of unseen elements. And what could that look like, So it's really not scientific at all. I kind of just intuitively tried to feel. But one fun thing, I mean, if you have questions, I can keep going. Obviously, I wrote my master's diploma on this, so I could keep talking.
It reminds me of the Duchampian concept. Duchamp had a concept called the infrathin, right? Which is about like you get into a chair and you can feel the warmth of the previous person who was in the chair, but you didn't actually see the person, right? But there's this like sort of psychic connection, this like energy that connects you without actually being connected. That's what this kind of reminds me of, right? Like all these moments that exist but aren't like objectively existing in a way that you can't do realism that way, right? There's nothing to realistically illustrate.
Right, but it's there.
It's there, right? Exactly. So it's this
when you
invisible.
Walk into it's totally like. I mean, I don't have a roommate, but if I had a phone call that was really sad and I had to hang up, and all of a sudden I'm in a bad mood, roommate walks in and they can feel my vibe. That's like tangible. You can even, people say that, like the vibe is tangible.
Yeah.
So I will have to look in. What was it called? The theory that
infrathin, 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 and it's Duchamp. I mean, Duchamp got there first for all of us, basically, but because I think he realized, there's a whole bunch of other ways that are out there that art can tap, and I can't objectively point to what I'm tapping, but I can describe it in different ways, right? And I think that's the connection between people as much as it is the connection between things.
Yeah, and I was also trying to take this non-anthropocentric perspective where I sort of acknowledged every furniture, instrument, sort of being in the apartment as an active participant in this exchange. So they're also inhabiting this space, and not seeing myself as this dominant human at the top of a hierarchy that uses the chair, that does all this. It's like, also, I was dealing with this idea of care, and how does that also affect these bodies in space. If you don't clean your sink, or if you don't fix a squeaky wheel on a cart, then you're going to be hearing that all the time, and it's going to affect the sound atmosphere, because you're neglecting necessary. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just is, And if you fix the wheel, it will change how the sound atmosphere is, and that might change your day. So there's a lot going on, and you could even say that's like its voice. It's like in pain or something.
It's a really interesting phenomenological kind of position that you're presenting here, right? It's like everything exists, and so therefore everything is actually interacting, and so therefore what would that actually then look like if you're going to try to visually represent it? Very interesting.
Yes, yeah, and it's a very vast, and I actually came to that sort of conclusion as I was like finishing up and deciding, okay, what really is this project? And I had to add more theoretical aspect to it. So I'm glad it turned into that. At the beginning, I just kind of wanted to bring these natural inspired abstractions into my apartment setting as a way of sort of introducing a world that maybe challenges physical expectations and sort of allows for fantasy, because I'm a big fan of fantasy. So I'm glad that I was able to get some theoretical structure. And
it makes what you're talking about very tangible for those who experience environmental impacts like that, especially on a heightened level where they might struggle with such heightened sensations, and how that might affect their day-to-day living. And I think that's a really cool approach to maybe how I would experience it.
Yeah, good point.
Really quickly before we kind of finish up, I just wanted to share these images as well that are by you, Mika, and I think these are quite incredible and it's slightly different to the other works, but still quite cool. What is happening here?
So these were, I was allowing myself to freely experiment with some of abstractions that were similar to those that I introduced into the drawings of the apartment, but without the obligations or restrictions of a room perspective. I didn't have to draw, scale. I was able to just sort of intuitively draw some of these unreal forms, that are referencing natural forms. I did a lot of practicing by studying images of animals, plants, natural phenomenon, and tried to sort of just notice little things I like and take from it. And so that you might see like something, I see like, a bone, or I see wings, or I might see a cloud, there's like a lot of that in there, feathers, that you might gather, but at the same time, it's kind of like unfamiliar in a way. So yeah, that's the basis of it. And then the stitched paper is sewn by hand with thread. I used embroidery thread and just a needle, and I sewed these two pieces of paper together, and then I stretched it around the canvas. That was more of an aesthetic decision. Just I've been doing, so this specific paper, when you rip it, I don't know if you can't really see it in this picture, but it has a really interesting edge. And so I did a lot of experiments with ripping the paper to get that sort of effect. And so this was a sort of evolution of that. And I do a lot of hand sewing, just like minor projects. So it was a fun way for me to integrate that into my
cool. Nice. It's amazing. Your work is really cool and very interesting. But tell us, how do we see more work about you, Mika, and where can we find more things from you?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram, I guess.
Cool.
What's your Instagram handle?
Okay, yeah, I will spell it. It's ELA to the number ING.DECORE. elating.decor. And then I also have a website, msolomonva.net.
Perfect, and we will put links for those in our link description, in our bio description.
Super.
So, and yeah, please do have a look at more work by Mika. Really an absolute star, and super artworks, and we're so delighted to see them and to share them with our audiences here on Spill the RT. So thank you, Mika. You have been fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And I think that brings us to Padraig Trehy. Padraig, tell us about you. Tell us what you're doing, what's happening, where are you going, what's going on?
What's your latest forgery?
My latest, well, it's funny because I've just finished making a silent film as if I was living in 1925 and using rules that applied then and not now. And yet I've set my film in 1960 just to confuse everything. I actually quite attracted to the idea of forgery, and I described my last film as a false archive, so that, because again, I think there's too much control over archival material across the arts, and as you can, I gorge on culture. I always have, so that my brain kind of spews out bits of song lyrics and bits of painting and literature, and the thought that I would have to go and get a lawyer to look over what comes out of my head is necessary, but also completely at odds with what I think certainly what I am trying to do. And yet I've found myself always attracted to a silent cinema, purely visual cinema, and see the challenge of trying to engage an audience without dialogue, without sound, with music, obviously, or no one could stay. But the challenge of trying to keep people in that experience in order to have an active audience, not a passive audience. So for me, it's the balance between, on the surface and in funding, my work would come from an experimental place, and yet I have no interest in that experiment not working on an intelligent audience.
Why 1960?
The story fell into my head, I suppose. The Stupid August is based on this, just one of these silly accidents of history, where in 1960, two people were holidaying in Ireland that you couldn't really have a bigger contrast to. So on the west coast of Ireland, Charlie Chaplin and his family are on their annual fishing holiday that they have in a small fishing village in Waterville, and he does it very quietly, no attention. He just wants to do his own thing. And on the other side of the country, they're welcoming in a guy called Otto Scarface Skorzeny, who was known as Hitler's favorite commando and also known as the most dangerous man in Europe. And the Irish establishment, politicians, church leaders, business people, are having a big welcoming party for this fucker. And Chaplin, who I believe is the greatest, I would make an argument for Chaplin almost being the greatest artist of the 20th century, full stop. And he's there quietly going about his business. And on the other side, all of Irish society is touting this fucking Nazi because he has the promise of money. People will sell their souls and their mothers for money. So that's where the idea came. So that the film is about that dichotomy and how it's also the idea of if you don't deal with evil, it'll just come back to haunt you.
Mm.
You know, and not necessarily in the place where it happened first. So if you don't, you know, get justice, or if you don't make it very clear and obvious that you think what these guys did were crimes against humanity and they should never be forgiven and it should never be forgotten, then you're likely to have things like it happen in your own country.
Mm.
You know, and America and Ireland and Argentina, you know, allowed war criminals into their country because it suited them economically.
Mm.
We had rockets we needed to build, damn it.
Yep, you needed to get to the moon. You know, you needed to get there before the Russians did it. Otherwise, the Cold War would be lost.
Mm.
Democracy would be completely screwed. You know, we know the argument, and I love a good moon race better than anyone. But, you know, Werner von Braun was a war criminal. I mean, that's the reality. I mean, like, it's a bit like the Elgin marbles, you know, it's a bit like, don't pretend that you have a right to have them. You flip and robbed them. You knocked them off the wall of a standing monument and you took them back. You know, you got to the moon with Nazi technology, you know, and Nazi ingenuity. So
I guess to me, it seems like that's where that, again, is that colonial impulse. Because if I need to get something done, then I can ignore some of the complexities under the guise of needing to get something done.
yeah, it's the greater good kind of argument, Josh, isn't it? It's the, I mean, and I think where Eamon and I would have a sense of this more in that, you know, it's not accidental or inconsequential that the Catholic Church supported these guys.
Yeah.
Because we lived in a country, you know, that was run by fascists and collars. You know, they were. There's no point calling them anything different. They were. They loved the fascists, whether it was Mussolini or Hitler, especially Franco. And they were rabid anti-communists. So Scorsese, again, this is part of where the film comes from, is that Scorsese offered himself to the CIA as a rabid anti-communist, and he'd get his buddies. He said he had at least 20,000 of them around the world. If you wanted an army to fight communism, he'd lead it. And even the CIA thought this was dodgy, you know, so thank God they didn't fully do a deal with him. But that, and at the same time, Chaplin, who's thrown out of America for allegedly being a communist, is happily hanging out in another part of Ireland, in a very, at the time in 1960, almost a primitive part of the country. You know, electricity is only arriving, you know, tourists are just arriving. So it just struck me that it was a way to examine some themes that I suppose Chaplin would have certainly not shied away from.
The great dictator on vacation.
Yeah, but that's it. I mean, I couldn't help but see him. You know what? You know, if he knew, you know, that, then what's he thinking? And I suppose whether he knows or not is kind of not necessarily explicit in the film. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter that he's not aware. But some of the people in the film are aware that they're kind of using language in Ireland against intellectuals that they used against Chaplin. And again, you go back, and it's the same language that Trump uses. You know, rats, you know, vermin, commie rats, you know.
Humanization, so therefore it's okay to do what needs to be done.
Yeah. It's okay to hunt them out of the country if they're vermin. You know, they're dehumanized. And it's the same language, but of course that language originates with Goebbels and Hitler. So
I find it
we're nearly
challenging
there.
that that things are not changing. So insofar as I know, and this is kind of as an extension to what you're talking about, there's the way people need to do things in order to get on, and you see it in every industry, in every practice, where people are required to do possibly bad things in order for them to get ahead, or they need to be in the right circles for the sake of being in the right circles, rather than just doing what it is that you feel you're passionate about or what you value. And I think Chaplin is a great example of that, because he had the motivation and the drive and the ability to just push on and to just make and make and make. And I think that's something that was always inspiring, that always inspired me. And I feel that while there was all of this stuff going around him, and you could see it in the space exploration, insofar as how they needed all of Russia's powers to be able to get forward to make things happen. And I'm like, why is it that we as a people, as a human race, need to why can't we work together in a humanitarian happy circle sort of way, where everybody is just going to be supportive of each other? What is it that we need to do in order to achieve that?
Well, the message is like Chaplin told us, like, and that's the first problem here is the phrase, why can't we work together? Because of course we can work together. That's the first thing that people won't want you to believe. So that the idea in Chaplin's practice and in his films, in that underneath all of what you were saying there, Eamonn, is greed. Greed drives the world. Greed, ego, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it ego, you can call it art, you can call it media, you can call it politics, you can call it economics, but it's bloody greed. So, and if there's greed, then there's division. And if there's division, then there's inequality. And once there's inequality, there's a reason to fight.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. I think that's really well said, and a really good way to sum up and to finish off today. Thank you, Padraig. You have been fantastic. A great guest. Thank you very much for coming on. Padraig, how can we learn more about your show, about your upcoming movie? What's going on? How do we find it?
Everything's been kept under wraps till the end of August. We're recording the score at the end of August.
Cool.
And from that moment on, we'll be trying to sing to the world of what we have done. And because it's a funny one where it's unusual, obviously, which will help in some ways to sell it. But again, it's unusual, which also mitigates against some people.
Do you have a website, social media we can put up for people? We'll drop
we will. I've actually taken down all my social media sites.
Well,
you can
see some of the upcoming notifications and different story updates on the Stupid August Instagram page, and hopefully there will be an announcement there. Am I right to say that?
And there will be a website, and there will be. We have loads of
planning.
We shot an entire behind the scenes section, so.
Great. Well, stay posted to the Stupid August Instagram page. I'll put a link of that in our bio. But once again, thank you, Padraig, for coming on. Move into your own practice, Katrīna, and just to see what's happening with you at the moment. If you want to give us a quick update of where you're at right now, what's happening in Katrīna Tračuma's studio.
Yeah, what's happening in this side of the world. Well, I'm currently preparing for a new reimagined reiteration of my piece that I did at Museum in May, my performance with my trash mountain and trash objects and memorabilia. So all of that is now going through a process of kind of reimagining, recycling, mixing, and it's going to be as a new performance that's also going to be educational, so it's going to have a different twist to it. It's going to be possible to see it live in Riga. It's happening on the last Saturday of this month, so the 24th of August,
And you can look up, there's Riga Svatki, which is the Riga celebrations, which essentially are lasting like a whole of summer, but you can look up the schedule on that official website. And if you're in Riga in the Baltics, please come along and see me on stage live. Yeah, nervous, but
is that going to stream?
Is it going to be streamed?
Are you going to stream it at the same
That's
time,
a good
or
idea.
is it only going to be live?
I'll try to figure that out, because the museum one I did get streamed, so that's actually, thank you for reminding me, Josh. That's helpful. Sure. Because should think about that.
That's great, because I mean we have audiences all around the world, so I mean it'll be great to get that out to everybody, and we'll put a link to that in our bio for this episode, and you'll see it on our New Collective website as well.
Thank you.
You're doing some other work as well, for with a few cows, I believe.
Yeah, I've been keeping to my schedule of painting this summer, and this piece that's also available on the NUA website that I created in June is an ode to my kind of continuous admiration of Rosa Bonheur. I've been like really a huge fan of her work since I discovered her during my bachelor's course. And so when I received a prompt from the Art of Compassion Project, which is also an international collective of artists, but they all get us together on the same theme of us being activists in terms of animal rights and creating vegan artwork. And we make exhibitions and stalls and all sorts of campaigns online and in real life all throughout the year. So this newest venture is another cookbook, which this illustration is for. So I was responsible for creating the visuals for a recipe that includes jackfruit as a substitute for cow flesh. So I've decided to take these two separate works by Rosa Bonheur of like this close-up of a cow and then this study in oil paints of a cow in a field that she did, and then merged them and imagined that they were like in this grove of jackfruit trees. And essentially that was my whole motivation. Yeah. And I really wanted it to also be quite vibrant and lustrous with the colors. So I used these acrylic inks that I'm obsessed with, and I can't wait to see
Not arsenic.
No, definitely not. Water-based, safe to inhale and work with.
How cool. That's really cool. And you can, as Katrina has quite rightly said, you can check that piece out on newacollective.com/Katrīna Tračuma. So do check it out, and if you want, buy it, because it's amazing.
Buy art from living artists. Buy art from living artists.
Oh my god, you sounded like a siren there, Josh.
Buy art from living artists. Do it! Do it!
We need to record this as like a ringtone. So anytime our phones ring, anybody in the vicinity just hears Josh's voice.
Buy art from living artists!
Yes.
Okay, we've moved to the Muppets now, Josh. So, I mean...